Hello, everybody. I'm Barbara Wilson, founder and CEO of Working with Cancer. As you may know, we're a UK-based social enterprise, and we provide coaching, training, and consultancy services to employers, to employees with cancer, and to working carers to help them manage work and cancer at any stage. And today I have great pleasure in speaking to Joe Larbie, who's an associate of Working with Cancer. Hello, Joe.
Barbara, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, good to see you. And we're talking about Joe's experience of cancer, what led her to join Working with Cancer, and kind of the things she's learned about her experience of having cancer, and managing her life and her work as a result of that. So, Joe, maybe you could just start by introducing yourself.
Sure. So I became a Working with Cancer associate coach just over 2 years ago. But I met Barbara, oh, about 12 years before that, when I was coming to the end of my treatment. Barbara came and presented from the HR perspective to the group that I was in, and I kept her details. And when I was really struggling to make sense of what I was going to do with myself, because I'd left the corporate world, I'd been self-employed, and I really just didn't know whether or what I wanted to do. And I got in touch with Barbara and very thankfully ended up being coached by Barbara and just really working through um, you know, what, and also getting used to what my life was going to feel and be post cancer. Um, so yeah, and I think one of the things that I learned very early on from the whole experience is that transition and finding your way forward isn't something that you can do or should think that you can do alone.
Mm.
Um,
Okay. So what was life and work like before you were diagnosed with cancer, Joe?
oh, I was a workaholic. I I, I trained as a solicitor. I'd had different careers. So I worked in research and development, specializing very much around the whole diversity and inclusion field, particularly for health sector, and wrote a co-authored a book on training in multiracial healthcare. Then I decided that I'd always wanted to be a lawyer, and so this was sort of my late 20s, time to do that or not do it. So I went and requalified
Mm.
and ended up in corporate practice. And as much as I loved the law, I didn't like being in corporate practice. And so, because I had quite a lot of experience around organizations and people, I moved to the people side of professional services firms and ended up becoming an HR and organizational development director on a board. And that's what I was doing. So, in a culture where really my partners worked 16, 18 hours a day, then that's what they expected of their senior non-practicing people. And that's what I did. And most of the time I enjoyed it. I worked with big accountancy firms as well.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the time that I was diagnosed, I'd moved to a medium-sized city firm with a small team, and I was just really busy. And I remember going to see my GP quite a few times for about 18 months saying, I don't feel well. And my GP constantly just saying, well, it's because you're overworking.
Mm.
And I eventually sort of thought, no, it's not because I'm overworking. I just don't feel. So I actually went and, and advocated myself and said, look, I know there's something wrong. I don't, because every year I went for a private Bupa scan as part of
Mm.
my senior medical cover, but they never found anything. I just, and so in the end, I got a referral, and that's when they discovered that that actually I did have cancer, and it was quite advanced. And I think I'll finish this, but it was advanced, and when the results came through, the NHS response was, "We can't. There's not a lot we can do." And at that point, I thought, well, I'm not about to roll over, and
No.
so I was fortunate enough to have private medical cover as part of my work. So that was the starting point
Yeah.
in
I've
being.
heard so many times about, unfortunately, about times people go to their doctors and because they don't feel things are right, and they get told, oh, it's stress, or you're too young to have, if people think they have cancer, you're too young to have cancer, and people have to sort of keep self-advocating and still kind of keep pushing for treatment, if they feel that the doctor's got it wrong, which is really, really tough. How did you feel when you were told it was advanced and there wasn't much they could do, or that was that they told you at the time? That must have felt awful,
Well,
Joe.
that was what came by the NHS from my GP. But in
Yeah,
fact, it all happened really quickly because it was September 2011, and I'd been for the colonoscopy. The the doctor who was conducting it had had to stop because he there was an obstacle, and so when I came round, I knew there was something wrong because it been so quick. And he said, we've got to do the next thing I'm going to do, and I will ring you tonight. And and I was home, and and I didn't tell my family, I didn't tell anyone, so I just sat there waiting for the phone to ring. And when he rang, he said, "I've made an appointment for you to see a surgeon. Can you go tomorrow?"
tomorrow. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And at that stage, I had to call my sister and say, and then so we went through all of that, and everything happened quite fast. The thing I was really most worried about was my job and what were they going to say.
yeah. So what
Uh,
what 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 did you do in terms of what with work, Joe? Did you tell
yeah,
tell them immediately,
I
or what
had
happened?
the surgery was booked for a week's time,
Uh-huh.
and it just so happened that my line manager, who was the managing partner, was away. So I couldn't really. I shared it with my immediate team because I did, we needed to prepare handover and all those and do all those practical things. And
Mm.
then when he came back, I already put an appointment in his diary to meet with him. So went and had this discussion with him, and he was stunned. It was just, it was at one of those moments where it's happening to you, but you have to look after the other person.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and we just kind of took it from there. And he was always very much of the mind, well, don't worry about anything. Just you deal with the health, and we'll make sure that you're properly supported. I'll look after your team and everything else.
mm.
And for 6 months, that's exactly what they did for me.
Which is
Uh,
terrific. How were the team when you told them, Joe?
oh, mm, very upset.
Mm.
My senior HR manager, who was one of those bring them on sort of personalities, was just, she was ashen. Um, but they very quickly started to think and spent quite a bit of time saying, okay, we're going to put something together, and then we're going to let's meet once a day and go through things, and you tell us what's what and who needs to be aware of what and do and all of that. They just took care of it all. And they
Mm.
did the same while post-op when I was at home. Um, we just worked out they didn't want to bother me, but equally they needed to run things by me sometimes.
Sure.
And I did that. And it was fine. It was,
Mm.
well, I mean, it was hard, but we were a good solid team anyway.
Yeah.
So
So
Mm.
it sounds like you got a lot of support or a supportive environment at work. So what were the main challenges that you faced at the time, and how did you deal with those, Joe?
I I think some of the physical challenges initially that was, I mean, I was somebody who was always up till then being very committed to being physically fit. So I'd go to the gym, even if working the hours that I did. And then on a Saturday or a Sunday, I went to the gym and had a really good personal trainer. I really enjoyed it. It always seemed to me that's just part of how, that stamina was what kept me able to work ridiculous hours. Um, and I looked after myself. So in the first few months when I mean, just doing things such as going to the local park and walking around the park when you're in pain, doing that. And then, gradually it starts to get better, or you physically don't feel quite as in as
Mm.
much pain. But then I had various sort of, uh, my stitching got infected, all sorts of things like that and when you and we had this the GP. My sister had actually had to go to my GP's office and demand that they get a nurse to come and look after me to change dressings and things
Mm.
because they didn't step up to help with anything. And so we got they amongst the team they'd allocate someone who would come and change the dressings. But generally, I was they weren't an impressive bunch. It was just you just felt. And I think if I didn't know that I had a very solid clinical team behind me, it might have felt worse. But actually, I just thought, well, they
Mm.
do what they do, and
Mm.
as long as they turn up and do what they're supposed to do. And then when I had my first scan, then it turned out that I had another cancer. So I then ended up having two major operations because they cleared the same area, but then they hadn't quite got it. And then, and then when I was starting to feel better, then I had the lung cancer complications as well. Well,
Mm.
it wasn't complications; it was lung cancer.
Yeah.
Um, mm. so by then I was thinking, I'm not sure. I was very tired. I'd gone back to work, um, but there'd been a lot of change um, on the board, and the level of politics was such that I just thought, I don't really, I don't want to be in this environment, and negotiated, well supported by the firm again,
Yeah.
um, negotiated an exit. Um, But at the same, and at that point as well, I was also writing a book,
Mm.
co-authoring a book, which was called How to Make Partner and Still Have a Life, which
Great, great title.
yeah, and it actually it gave me something to get up for.
Yeah.
So every morning I'd write from about 6 in the morning till midday, and that was it. Corrections after that, and
Mm.
worked with a colleague, my co-author, who, we'd got a very good publisher as well. So it was all, we had this timetable and knew that we had to just deliver this thing. Um, and I look back now and I can't quite believe that I took on writing a book, and a lengthy book at such a time, but I think it also saved me.
When you say it saved you, what would you tell me a bit more? What would you say, Joe?
Well, it one of my fears was I'm not going to come through this. Um, and so sometimes when sitting there writing, thinking, being creative, thinking about something other than how I feel or what was happening to my body, I would, sometimes it was possible to think, believe if I can do this, I'm going to be all right. I
Yeah.
can do this. I haven't lost it. I'm not, I don't know what the future looks like, but this is part of my what's going to take me forward.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, if in a sense you weren't in paid employment anymore, but you nonetheless you were still using your brain and you had an outlet for your talents when work paid employment at that stage wasn't any longer an option, at least
Mm,
at that stage in terms of corporate life.
mm.
So tell me, we met you and I a few years ago now, as you said, when I became your coach. What's your view of coaching as a way of helping people with cancer manage their lives and return to work?
Well, I felt very positive about coaching because I had already experienced coaching and
Yeah.
done training for myself. Because in my work, quite often, I used to find early on that I was coaching others. So I thought, well, I better learn how to do this properly, which I did. So, but it was the first time that I was at the receiving end of being
Mm,
coached and also being coached when I felt that my world had just completely fallen apart. And you know, the I remember a couple of times just thinking one of the things that was most beneficial was that I could actually come along to those our sessions and I could speak to you about aloud about anything that I couldn't say to my friends or family
mm,
because it was really I learnt probably when I heard my first op and then afterwards that actually it wasn't always helpful to be honest with them about how I felt or how I was feeling because most of them had this image of me as being a very strong, competent person who always was in control.
mm,
And actually that was the last thing I felt. So and also their own fears about, this cancer, you know, cancer, if you get cancer, you're probably going to die. And I remember one member of my family who, she would literally shiver with just fear around me. So actually coming along to our sessions was kind of like, oh, Barbara's not going to be fazed by hearing any of this. You'll have been there and done that. And also, just remember you sometimes making me laugh when you just think, like, I'll sit on the train going home and think, I don't know why I was laughing, but it was. I hope they keep the bit in about your cat as well. Would bloody well come in and go. What's it called? Tiddles.
treacle. No,
Treacle.
was it treacle or well, I don't know. I can't remember. It's either treacle or bubble. It might have
Oh,
been
well,
bubble. I can't
I
remember.
think it
Actually,
was
no, I
bubble.
can't remember. Anyway.
Right.
But yeah, I guess I believe in the fact that you're entitled to laugh occasionally, despite the blackest days.
Yeah. And also I think just in terms of looking at and considering my options and my choices, I think that coaching was really important for that, for being able to look at a whole range of possibilities and to think I could do some of that, or I could do none of it at all. But that having the opportunity, I think that in my earlier work in life, it being so on track in terms of school, university, qualified, do this, do this, do this. This is where you're going. That that whilst it was scary to be having exploring with another person, what might I do, and if I'm going to do it, how would I do it, and um, it gave me an enormous permission to do something that I just wouldn't have done, just because what was my self discipline used to be very much this is where you're going, get on with it. Um, so that sort of just fluidity. And also, I just remember just thinking, well, you know, I've got nothing to lose. I mean,
Yeah,
well, do I really want to just do more of the same and go back to being in a very hard, challenging environment that pays well? Um, and I had some tough choices to make down the line as well because of my financial commitments and
yeah,
as I was by myself and am by myself, some of what you can afford when you're paid a good corporate salary and then you're not, even with savings. As I did all of, really had it was a whole life review, and
mm,
in the end, it paid off. It worked, and it
mm,
took and it's taken some of the pressure off.
mm.
And I think the other thing about moving out of the corporate life, moving out of um, I remember saying to someone, and I wrote it down, I used to be somebody, now I'm me. And that was because when I was Joe Larbie, director of whatever, people would return my calls, people would respond promptly to my emails. But when I didn't have that position and title, it people wouldn't, you know, I wasn't someone on there must get back to her promptly because of who she is or
Yeah,
what with that title. Um, and 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 again that constantly being frustrated with it, but beginning to enjoy that sense of actually I am more than the job, you know.
yeah.
Um,
But it's interesting. I do think a cancer diagnosis gets you to confront a lot of things, including who you are and what you're doing with your life and why you're doing certain things and not doing others. And I think, it gives you, to some extent, weirdly, it gives you space to explore some of those things, but
mm,
also determine what's right for you. So you're aware that there are choices and that you can make those choices and potentially change your story if you wish to.
yeah, absolutely.
What I mean, when you look at sort of our coaching service, what what do you make of kind of coaching as a way of helping you deal with cancer in a way that other services don't don't provide those things? How do you think coaching helps people?
I think it helps in a number of ways and at different levels. Um, it's clearly not, I don't see myself as doing counselling. It's really not about counselling. It's not about somebody to listen to who just listens to you and somehow, feels gives you support and it's quite support. It's a much more, I think, because I come with a unique experience of having sat where they are.
Mm.
So I was coaching the other day, and my coachee was saying how anxious they were about up and coming scan.
Mm.
Um, and I'm a master NLP neuro linguistic practitioner, and I was guiding them through, how they communicate with themselves and the subconscious, and tips for just getting through the next few weeks until they have their scan that will hopefully help them to feel less paralyzed by what the scan, this thing's coming up and it's going to be
Yeah.
absolutely dreadful. So I think that there is that bringing that practical experience and being able to frame it in a way that makes it accessible to the coachee. There is something about also being able to work with them, provide the framework that I alluded to earlier, which is about how do I think about, how do I consider, how do I explore what my options are, the choices. Um, and then I also think that the thing that coachees, co- coaching helps coachees with, it takes time and it takes building trust, but it helps the coachee, the individual, to process the experience and the sense of loss and the sense of bereavement, the the what they were pre-cancer. Because I don't think it's always easy to recognise. You know, sometimes in coaching when someone's saying, "Yes, but I want to go back," I'm aiming to perform and deliver at the level that I did before cancer. Um, and I think it's really important as a coach to ask that question for them to consider. Is that where you are? Is that really still appropriate? That was then, this is now. And you can examine it, you can explore it, and you can say, yeah, it is really how I want to be.
Mm.
Or you can say, I need to change, but I don't know how to change. And that's where we come in, which is we can guide, we can work with you towards where you want to get to, or
Mm.
some of the places you might want to go.
What one of the things that you decided to do, and a significant thing, was to take up self-employment. Is that something you'd considered before, and in terms of and why did you decide to take that step?
I have years before I had been self-employed, and I'd set up a very much a specialist HR advisory coaching type consultancy company, and did that for a number of years. Um, but decided in the end that when I went into larger organizations to do consulting for them, they'd often ask me if I would join them, and
Mm.
eventually the financial stability was and security was more attractive. So I did that. Um, I when I stopped and ended the company and went back into corporate life, uh, part of me thought, well, maybe when I'm older, I might become self-employed, and do something around coaching and um, strategy and all, that sort of area. So it wasn't something that it had always been of interest, but it wasn't something that I was desperate to do, just because actually when you're a senior person and financially you're doing very well, which means that you can secure your future, and very sensibly thinking about things like, pensions and so on,
Yeah.
then, then why would you? I think, Barbara, the post treatment, I think what I realised and found hard, but accepted when I went back to work, I it, it just I was so exhausted by the demands. And actually, people, my partners and my colleagues, they they operated on the basis if you're here, you must be all right. So there were no excuses. You were expected to get on and deliver. And I just thought this is actually going to kill me. And
Yeah.
I have to get out of here. So, and somebody later asked me, well, why didn't you just go to another organization?
Mm.
And I just thought, I just don't want to be, I don't want to be in another organization because and I know me, I don't do things by halves and I'll go in there and want to, you know,
Mm.
grab the challenges. And so, and not that self-employment doesn't have its challenges, but at least, you know, the significant drivers come from me deciding that I'm going to do this or I want to do this as opposed to being expected to by by a big organization that's paying me.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I often think, in certainly, but looking at my case, some of it was about kind of just maintaining control over your life rather than being at the mercy of an unforgiving manager or colleagues. In a way, it was your choice, and you were then. I felt I was more in control of my destiny, having made that choice, and you were no longer potentially the victim of somebody else, as it were. That's how I felt, and
Yeah, absolutely.
I think
Uh,
sometimes,
yeah,
yeah,
and I think for me, an expression of that was I that I began to allow myself to take longer holidays,
yeah,
whereas before I always used to think it's pushing it if I take 15 days. So to actually be able to just go away for 15 days, 20 days, and it took me a long time to feel that that was all right. But I couldn't have done that in the corporate. You're not
no,
serious corporate, senior corporate role if you're going
no,
to
no.
disappear for 20 days every few months.
It wouldn't have gone down well.
No,
It wouldn't have gone down well.
no, no.
So looking back now, Joe, what sort of advice, what top tips would you pass on to others trying to manage their life and their work after, with as well as after cancer?
I think it's the importance of advocating for yourself, the
Mm,
importance of speaking up, the importance of asking questions, irrespective of the title of the person who's telling you or giving you the information or the diagnosis. You have to speak up. You have to ask, and not just go along with it because it's you, it's happening to you, and you need as much information as possible in order to make decisions about not just about the operation
mm,
or the current situation, but your life and what they're proposing. And if it doesn't feel right for you, asking, feel you should ask for a second opinion rather
yeah,
than think that you're being. I don't want to be a nuisance. Well, you're not being a nuisance. Standing up for yourself and believing in yourself. Um, I think that's one of the key lessons. Also, just relearning to trust yourself and your body. Um, I
Mm.
have, a, I have a, I have a sheet of paper up here that says in big bold red letters, and this was halfway through my various treatments and chemo, and I remember I had one really bad time, and I wrote, "My body knows how to heal itself, but sometimes it needs help, and it takes time to do it." And
Yeah.
and that was, that was, don't know where that eventually came from, but it really was that, because I wouldn't describe myself as the most patient person anymore. You know, it's just, you know, 3 courses of chemo. When am I going to start feeling better? What they, why the, so there is that actually my body's not my enemy. I'm, you this thing, it's a partly about protection, and that's the way that it works. It doesn't feel right. It feels invasive. Look at what it's done to me, but your your body is still, if you can find a way to learn to trust your body, I think that's important. Um, I think the airline thing about putting on your own seatbelt or the mask before you help anyone is important as well. It's that, again, particularly thinking often of women who are mothers or care for others, who are so used to thinking about everyone else. They hold down a full-time work, or something that's really demanding, and they think about everyone else but themselves. And I find that often in coaching, I have to remind them that no, it's really important. It's not selfish to be thinking about yourself. And also sometimes in coaching, because that's so much their way of being, they don't know how to start to think
Yeah.
being being me, I in the center. It just feels very wrong, and you can see sometimes people struggling with that.
Mm.
You know.
So is there anything we've not discussed that you feel is important that you just want to add to anyone, if people listening to or watching this video, Joe? Anything that we've not discussed that you feel you'd like to add?
I'm just looking at some of my notes. I've I've got to learn to say no, particularly when people try to pigeonhole you based on your previous career.
Yeah.
Um, you know, if you've decided to move in a certain direction, it's hard enough doing that without people feeling that you have to
Yeah.
resist people trying to push you down a way that they think is more you. Um, I think also manage your expectations and be realistic about what and how much you can do and deliver. As a lifelong overachiever, I sometimes find this very hard to do, and it requires constant vigilance and action because my pre-cancer expectations, standards, and performances are deeply embedded in my psyche. I constantly used to build myself up and beat myself up, and still do, about failing to deliver to what are often unrealistic expectations.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're our own worst enemies, Joe.
Uh, oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing, when you say that, actually, I just remember that in our sessions, of the importance of humour as well, the importance of humour, even when you're by yourself, and just being able to sometimes just laugh at yourself, because I can go off on a thread of thought about, you know, maybe this pain is indicative of something else, and learning to catch myself and "Oh, get over yourself." But it's quite funny, and I find that we're working with cancer when we get together as a team. There is a dark humor sometimes,
Indeed.
and
Yeah,
it's wonderful because it's nothing is sacred about, we're here, we're living proof of living and working with cancer. So yeah, it should be possible to find humour in it as well as the more serious things that are part of what we do.
mm. Thank you, Joe. Huge thank you for sharing your story with me and others watching, many others, I hope, watching this video, and telling us about what you've learned about yourself and about work and about cancer, and passing on some really good information and good tips to the audience for this video. So I'm going to wind up. Thank you, Joe, for being
Please,
with me
Barbara, for
today.
inviting me.
I just wanted to finalize this interview by saying that the interview's been recorded by Working with Cancer. If you'd like to find out more about our work and our services, do please get in touch with us either via our website at www.workingwithcancer.co.uk or contact us at admin@workingwithcancer.co.uk. Thank you so much for listening and have a good day. Thank you very much.